The Cardinals venture out to the Pacific Northwest, try to stick it to a playoff team in the Seattle Mariners, try to get over 500, end the season with a bang in the month of September. However, they come up short in a grotesque sixth inning. Final score Seattle 4 and the Cardinals 2. He's Brenden Schaeffer, B Schaefer Daily here on STL Sports Central. We're presented by DraftKings. The crown is yours. I'm Luke Slabaugh, B Schaefer. Your takeaways, high level thoughts after tonight's loss out on the West
Yeah.
Coast.
Hey, here's a thought. Glad to see Alec Burleson back in the lineup. He got the offense going, and unfortunately, it was all the offense the Cardinals would muster in the entire game. Jeremy calling some attention to that. 2-run shot for Burley. It's 17th of the season for him, and things were looking good at that point in time. This had to be the best road start Miles Mikolas has had all year, because it seems like anytime he's getting beat up upon, it really does happen away from Busch Stadium. And you get through a few innings, okay, still zeros. You get a lead. Okay, things are going well. And then, Luke, I mean, the sixth inning happens, and it's in part Miles Mikolas, Gordon Graceffo responsible for the latter half of it. And the Cardinals just couldn't find any offensive firepower thereafter. The Burley home run ends up being the only thing. It's just kind of a weird game. You know, you feel bad about the fact that you did get a pretty solid road start from Miles, wasn't able to sustain it, and then they couldn't get the offensive backing that they needed to win. You had to win this game like 5-4, 6-5, and they couldn't come up with those additional runs.
Right-hander Miles Mikolas pitching to a 6.54 ERA on the road this season. And Brendan, people just tuning in who might not have caught the full game, he was 9 up, 9 down, perfect through 3.
Yeah.
Both he and Brian Wu were going back and forth, the right-hander for Seattle. It looks like we had a pitcher's duel on our hands. And Mikolas goes through 5 solid innings of no runs, 3 hits allowed. What went wrong there to start the 6th?
I mean, it just starts to pile up on him quickly, right? Isn't that kind of what we've seen all season long on the road? It tends to come in bunches against Miles Mikolas. Although I would say this instance, it wasn't exactly the same as we're used to seeing, because a lot of time against Miles, it is the long ball that ends up costing him, and that really wasn't the case. But anytime you come around and give up the leadoff walk, right, that's what really can come back to haunt you. And in that inning, you know, Miles Mikolas gives up the walk and the hit. And then, of course, nothing else thereafter could have been his fault because he's taken out of the game. But you put Gordon Graceffo into a difficult situation. You add to it that he walks Cal Raleigh, which, look, that's the last guy I want to be facing if I'm just coming in out of the bullpen in a situation like that. But that's why you mentioned it off the top. The Mariners are a team trying to make the postseason, and they're in a very solid position right now to do so. And Cal Raleigh is one of the big reasons. So you end up, if you're Miles Mikolas, you don't want to walk the leadoff man, then give up a base hit so that your bullpen guy, Graceffo, has to face Raleigh and Julio Rodriguez. That just was not a great spot to come into. And, of course, Graceffo ends up getting pounded around a little bit from there.
Yeah, if the goal was to not let their best guys beat you, Cal Raleigh 0 for 3 with a walk and a run scored. So mission accomplished there. Jorge Alcala, the right-hander, striking him out on a 100-mile-an-hour heat away. So they limited what the big dumper could do against them tonight. There's a good question here in the comments from Sam Foreman, and I guess this is dovetailing into what you just said. Why
Yeah.
bring in Gordon Graceffo after Miles Mikolas? He's getting pinched there by Chris Guccione, by the way, the home plate umpire. That walk there to Rivas, I believe it was pinching him there on the corners.
Yeah, I want to go back and check the umpire score out from this game, because I know there was a little bit of that, but a lot of times we do end up seeing some of those things, and they can come back to haunt the Cardinals. We've seen at times that those tend to help the Cardinals. Just looking at that Rivas at bat on the game cast in particular, it looked like the slider that made it 3-2, and then he ends up fouling off a few pitches. That one you probably would think is close enough to be called a strike, and Miles does not end up getting the call there. But yeah, the comment was asking about Graceffo. Why is he the guy to come in, right? And it's kind of interesting, Luke, because the Cardinals, get the series win over the weekend, and suddenly you're back at 500, and you're thinking, maybe Cardinals fans aren't thinking it, but you're looking at it going, technically, they're not out of anything right now, right? And you want to be able to put your best foot forward and go out there on the road trip and really see what you're made of here. And yeah, you go to Graceffo, first guy off the bench, or excuse me, first guy out of the bullpen. It's kind of one of those deals where I wonder, that's a great experience for Graceffo. I think the future for him, rather than as a starter like he was in the minors, could be a guy that comes out in some key leverage spots in the bullpen. And, it's a combination of, not having a lot of that experience and maybe wanting to see it from him versus, okay, we're now at 500. Is there anybody else that we could throw out there in that spot? Now I'd have to look back and see, okay, who should have been available, who wasn't available. It's something we can't necessarily know here from our homes when they're out there in Seattle, but that's always a conversation as well that especially at this point in the year, I think Ollie is definitely not going to want to try to get anybody injured by overworking them, that sort of thing. But Brian also kind of harping on the Graceffo decision. 21 games under his belt, 2 last year. He's 25. Doesn't have enough experience yet. Give the kid a chance. Runway year. So actually, that turned around on me. Brian seems to be okay with the decision. Graceffo, to me, Luke, is one of those guys that I do look at for like the 7th, 8th, 9th inning role potentially next year. Having him face that part of the lineup, and also be able to theoretically give you some length, right? You're cruising along with Miles. You think, okay, he can go deep at this point. But I think Ollie Marmol knows as well as anybody, once the wheels fall off for Miles, it can happen rather quickly. And so he was there with the rescue mission, without waiting very long. I think he had that spot in the order probably planned out to say, if things aren't going well, we're going to put Graceffo in there. I don't have an issue with it. It's just one of those things that in a season where you're probably looking at a 500 ball club, your relievers are going to look like a Gordon Graceffo, who doesn't have a ton of experience, but you're trying to, figure out what he's made of. And I think you're going to find some good data on some guys from this. Like Alcala, he throws 100, was probably a nice pickup that you can look for 2026, but you're going to have some growing pains, I think, with some of these guys out of that bullpen.
Yeah, this patchwork approach to the bullpen, getting rid of some of the guys there at the deadline with Maton, Mats, Helsley, all them. So it looks different, and you're trying to audition guys. And to your point earlier, keep them healthy. At this point, the objective, while competing and playing with your hair on fire for the rest of the year, is get in and out of this thing healthy. And I think that's very important. The Cardinals jump out to the lead, one out top of the fourth. Ivan Herrera gets a two-seamer middle singles, and then Alec Burleson. We mentioned this off the top. First game back from the IL, Garrett Hampson being optioned, a 2-run blast. First day off the IL in 3 days, or 3 years to the day that he made his major league debut. Good to have Burley back in the lineup, and what did you see from him tonight?
Yeah, I mean, that's a big swing. He still had a couple of strikeouts, and the Cardinals as a lineup struck out 14 times. But it's just, I feel like your lineup just looks so much more potent with him in it. And obviously, you're waiting out the Wilson Contreras suspension, and he should be back available tomorrow, if I'm not mistaken. And you'll even gain that extra legitimate bat in the middle of your lineup. Like Newpar, Herrera, Burleson, add Wilson back into it. You want to see Gorman every single day that you possibly can to figure out what he's made of and be able to make a determination about him. Obviously, you want to see more offensively from Mason Wynn, but we know he's kind of going through some injury stuff right now as well. Like that top 6, I think makes a big difference. And to me, Luke, the runway year, as we've called it for the Cardinals, has maybe not been, there hasn't been 100% hit rate, right? There's some guys who you look at a Jordan Walker and you go, yeah, we've given him a look and we still maybe don't know. And you might be leaning on the downside of what he's potentially capable of being. But there are other guys who can certainly say, if we had any question coming in, we don't anymore. And I really do feel like that's the bat for Alec Burleson. It's going to be consistent. It's going to be a guy that a 2 strikeout night like tonight is a rarity for him with the way that he approaches plate appearances and can always put the bat to the ball. So I like seeing him come off the injured list, and it wasn't a super long stint, which is great. And he's able to get a couple of weeks under his belt to end the season. I think he's going to be a fixture next year, Luke. We might have a lot of questions about what this Cardinals roster will look like, the changes that could be made. Alec Burleson is not one of those for me. I would be very surprised if he's not in the heart of the order for the Cardinals to begin the 2026 season.
He just kind of seems like a jack of all trades type of guy. He can turn around on a baseball, he can hit for power, but the hit tool is certainly there. He seemed versatile in the field. Perhaps you would like him at first base rather than the corner outfield spots, depending on your personnel available that day. I remember Joe Roderick talking about this maybe a couple weeks ago, that Burleson more profiles as a guy that you would sandwich like a 6th hitter in a more deep lineup when you had a traditional power hitter maybe in the 3-4 spot. So it'd be interesting to see how Heim Bloom approaches that in the offseason, and how this lineup is constructed after this September comes to an agreeable end. Want to give a shout out to our sponsor for the show, and this is DraftKings, Missouri. Show me state. Rev up those fryers because DraftKings Sportsbook, America's top-rated sportsbook app, it's coming soon. You can sign up today. New Missouri customers can get $300 in bonus bets when we launch on December 1. Download now and place a $5 bet when DraftKings goes live. It brings everything you need to elevate your game day, including live in-game betting, lightning fast payouts, and endless ways to get in on the action, all right from the telephone. And when we officially go live in Missouri, you'll be betting with the Sportsbook app trusted by millions, safe, secure, and with fast money withdrawals. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use the code STL Sports to grab $300 in bonus bets with just a $5 bet when DraftKings goes live December 1st. That's code STLSPORTS in partnership with DraftKings Sportsbook. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. 21 plus, physically present in Missouri. Eligibility restrictions apply. Bonus bets expire 7 days after issuance. Excludes customers who redeem pre-launch sign-up offer. Terms at sportsbook.draftkings.com. Welcome back, everyone. STL Sports Central. You seem to have highlighted this comment. Brenden Schaeffer, Brian Quinn commenting, the offense is the B team, he says. Burley's back. Wilson tomorrow. Nolan Arenado. Who knows?
Yeah, that's sort of what I was alluding to a little bit earlier. Just this idea that, okay, Burleson's back in there with Wilson coming back. That's like a six-pack of guys at the top of your order on a given day that you should feel pretty good about. And then, you're going to continue to cycle through catchers. We haven't seen a ton offensively from Jimmy Crooks, but I think continuing to get him his time is valuable as they look into, what's his role going to be for next year. I think Sajayce's in that category as well, but, he's a guy that's got a sub 600 OPS, and so he's not necessarily somebody that, say, when an Arenado comes back, you're going to be plugging Sajayce in as often. I think this has largely been sort of the B team, if you will, in recent days, but it's been a team that's been able to come up with some wins. And really, despite not getting a ton of great consistent pitching either, they've been able to kind of stay in the mix. So it's not really the end of the season that anybody wanted to be talking about, Luke, but it is sort of where the Cardinals are at, where it's still kind of evaluating guys while also going, would love to see you, maybe go on a run. And then the phrase that Chris really enjoyed, comes to an agreeable end. That's just sort of where we're at right now with a few weeks yet to go.
I'm not trying to mince words, but I am trying to be pleasant here, as this is a family program.
There you
Make
go.
sure that the comments make sure the comments are, they're family friendly. I've seen some middle fingers. I've seen some F word, but
You'll
not
see.
from me. I wasn't.
You'll see all kinds of stuff, and sometimes we have a few recurring friends that like to throw that out there. I always try to keep an eye out. I'll roll through and see if anybody needs to be admonished. We won't be afraid to do that.
King's Echo has given me a run for my money. And by the way, King's Echo, I remember your comments a few weeks ago asking if I wear colored contact lenses. I do not. These are all natural. Speaking
Those
of
are
all
just my
natural,
eyes, maybe.
yeah, it's the color of shirt that I chose.
There you go.
Speaking of naturals, left-hander Nick Raquet makes his major league debut at 29 years old. Fascinating story. Leaves baseball for 3 years as a minor leaguer once COVID hits, because 2020 they didn't play minor league
Yeah.
baseball. He goes back to William and Mary, finishes his undergrad, works as a risk consultant at Ernst and Young for 3 years, back in a neighborhood that I used to live in, Tysons Corner, Virginia. Goes to
Okay.
the Atlantic League, plays in York, Pennsylvania for the Revolution, and now, not unlike a Chris Roycroft type. Wow, I have a lisp there. Roycroft. He is in the major leagues, 29 years old, and has a clean seventh inning as a reliever. What was your takeaway there?
Yeah, I love seeing that. You love seeing stories like that, and those are the types of stories that, frankly, a season like the one the Cardinals are having, you might be able to kind of get the most out of. And sometimes those stories turn into more than just feel good tales. Like, you can find out that you maybe have something in a guy, and certainly they've gotten a look at Raquet throughout the minor leagues. He had a really strong run down there in Double-A Springfield, and gets to Memphis and was certainly more than passable there. And now you see what you got. And anytime you can add, a lefty to the mix, the Cardinals have certainly been in need of that. And so nice to see that. And, you never know where it may lead. Trying to find options for the bullpen that Chaim Bloom doesn't have to go out and buy under the, the guise of whatever ownership may be willing to spend or not spend. That's perfectly acceptable, I think, to to the proceedings here at the end. So we're starting to see a little bit more of that type of stuff, I think, happen where you can go, okay, I'll make a note about an Alcala. Okay, I want to see Raquet again. Let's see what we can get out of him and maybe, invite him back to spring and see what we have. It's all in flux right now before next season. And that was a great thing to see tonight.
Yeah, the budget bullpen approach has given way to some good stories. And really, like baseball now, college baseball, if you have the talent, it doesn't necessarily matter what level you play in. We've seen Roycroft, Division III product, little Caleb Durbin, 5'7" for the Milwaukee Brewers out of Wash U in St. Louis, killing it. And so for someone to quit baseball, come back after 3 years, has it in his blood, and 29 years old makes his major league debut, huge fan of that. The Cardinals carry on, and they look to take the middle game of this series, 8:40 first pitch tomorrow on FanDuel Sports Network Midwest. Got some Cards After Dark approaching as it is almost 11:30 on the clock. Left-hander Matthew Liberatore against the righty George Kirby. Seen Kirby pitch this year. He's got some stuff that plays up. Started the year on the IL. It's going to be a great challenge. What are you anticipating in this matchup?
Yeah, George Kirby, just looking at his numbers, I'm a little surprised to see that they are kind of lagging behind to the degree that they are. ERA in the mid fours is rather uncharacteristic for him. And so sometimes the Cardinals are maybe able to jump on those type of guys where, their stuff is better than what they've performed. Sometimes it's not the case. If I think about Sandy Alcantara, certainly that's not been the way that the Cardinals have perceived him this season, despite him maybe not having as solid of a season. But I think about Matthew Liberatore, it's more about that for me, Luke, because this has been like, I want to say like a months-long process and maybe even a little bit longer than that of the Cardinals trying to get Liberatore back to what they know that he can be. And really, there's not any trick or rhyme or reason to it, but it's been a matter of, hey, can this guy sustain the velo as the outing goes deeper, as he gets into, 50, 75, 80 pitches? Can he continue to be that guy that's floating, mid 90s, low 90s, and not 90 flat when it comes to the fastball velocity? And I would say that even if the box scores week over week haven't told the tale, I think he's been making some real progress in that regard. And the outing against the Athletics that we saw from him last time out was easily his best in a number of months. And so can he follow that up with, you don't have to shut him out tomorrow night. We know that the Mariners have some good bats in that lineup, but can he continue to take another step forward and maybe even get 6 innings out of him, which is, you're not going to push it if it's not there. But I think the Cardinals would really feel good about him kind of going through another lull. It's the second that he's had in his season. He had one earlier. Ollie has talked about him being able to work through that, and then clearly was going through another one. Can he then conquer that mountaintop and go into the offseason saying, hey, it wasn't perfect, but this full season in the rotation was about as good as we could have hoped for, and now we can build upon that. I think that's really what we're looking for from Matthew Liberatore and what the Cardinals are as well. So the degree to which he's able to kind of take that next step in that journey and continue to build on the progress that he's had and maybe have it even show up again in the box score would be great to see. And hey, I saw Samuel kind of giving me trouble. Technically, Cardinals could still win this series. You could leave Seattle a game above 500. We'll see what they're able to do with the game tomorrow night, but Liberatore definitely gives you a chance. I do worry a little bit about that George Kirby matchup because he does have great stuff, Luke. So we'll see what the Cardinal bats with Wilson Contreras hopefully back into the lineup, see what they can do about old George Kirby tomorrow night.
T-Mobile Park certainly lends itself to pitchers. I actually saw a no-hit bid by Zach Greinke there a few years ago that ended in the ninth, I want to say, maybe one out into the ninth back when he was pitching with the Astros. Some final thoughts here, and I'm looking through the game book now. The Cardinals only had one opportunity with a runner in scoring position, and that was the final plate appearance with Nolan Gorman striking out and Ivan Herrera advancing to second base on a wild pitch briefly before that. So striking out 14 times certainly doesn't lend itself to a productive day at the plate, and they don't back up Miles Mikolas. Promising start through 5 innings for Miles, 5 scoreless, and then everything kind of goes off a cliff there in the 6th. They lose 4-2 the final. Final thoughts from you, Brenden Schaeffer, as we close the book on this one and look ahead to tomorrow night's game.
Yeah, and I guess the one thought that maybe if people want us to be a little bit more critical about, Leahy should have pitched the 6th if he's healthy. That's the one thing that I would look at and say, like, we're not in Seattle. We don't really know the extent to which, Ollie Marmol is dealing with a short bullpen. I just checked back to make sure that I wasn't missing anything. Leahy pitching on the 6th, did pitch 2 innings, and so very much a possibility when he's been a guy that's gone multiples more consistently of late. He hasn't had a solo 1-inning appearance since back on the 25th of August. Everything since then has been 2 inning and a third, 2 innings, 2 innings. So as much as that was the name that came to mind for me as well, I didn't want to harp too much on that because very easily you could say, all right, he pitched 2 days ago and they're going to give him an additional day. Doesn't mean he's not healthy, but it does mean that you have to kind of figure out whether the juice is worth the squeeze when you have been pushing Kyle Leahy a little bit more. Another thing that they look back at is, how many pitches over the last week, how many multi-inning appearances, those sorts of things. And as an example, when he pitched on the 3rd of September, he did get 2 days off before then pitching again 2 innings, Luke, on the 6th. So I would say that if I had to guess, again, we're not out there asking Ollie, but probably today was a day they would want to stay away from him. And then you could assume that he would be available again to pitch tomorrow out of the bullpen. It's unfortunate because you're right. Maybe a Kyle Leahy comes in and can save that spot for the Cardinals, and it's a completely different, rundown with your 7th, 8th, 9th guys that follow. But I think it was also a spot to find out more about Gordon Graceffo. Unfortunately, it was a moment in which he just wasn't quite ready to guide the Cardinals to the other side. Doesn't mean it'll be the last time we see them try that, but I think that was the best explanation I have to what we saw in the 6th. And Luke, it feels like that was the game, so it makes sense to maybe finish with that and talk a little bit more about it, explore it as much as we can.
Right. Things kind of avalanched from there. The Cardinals
Yeah.
give up 4 runs there
I
in
was
the
not
bottom
going
of
to
the
highlight
6th.
you. I'm sorry, Luke. I was not going to highlight King's Echo, but I went to scratch my nose and I clicked his damn comment, which is one I didn't want to show because as much as, and look, I'll just put it on there. He's saying Walker does not deserve a roster spot. Look, Jordan Walker is struggling. A lot of guys are. I'm going to be very interested to see what his offseason looks like, but we've seen ups and we've seen downs from a lot of these guys, Luke, and that's really just what it's been.
Right. And sun chips have even worse value. I will just say that to you in the
Not a Sun
comments.
Chips guy?
Never been a fan. I think like the tomato salsa one is all right.
Garden
If
salsa. It's good.
there's nothing available, sure, but just think of the options that you have. You got a smorgasbord of snacks available.
What's your
Skinny
top
Pop,
chip?
undefeated goat.
Okay.
I think the Lay's baked is certainly up there for me.
Okay.
I had a job in
That's a little bland for
Oklahoma.
me.
Well, I mean, how bland do you want to
Well,
get,
I'm
man?
pretty
Like
bland with my chip taste, but Lay's baked might be a new level. I mean, garden salsa sun chips. And look, the most of the bag is air anyway. So I feel like I, go to eat some and I've eaten half the bag because it's just like, all right, but in fairness, you didn't put that many chips in the bag, that sort of thing. Now I kind of sound like I'm telling the commenters to put the fries in the bag. That's not what I'm doing. I should be putting the fries in the bag. We're just having fun at midnight, all right? That's all this is. Talking chips. Is that so wrong? I don't think it is.
talking ship with my bud B. Schaefer, and it's all quiet at the Schaefer household as we are past 11:30 Central Time here.
Hope it stays that
Brenden
way.
Schaefer, I want to thank you. I want to thank you for your analysis here tonight. We're going to pack this up. I am on the postgame show tomorrow, I believe, with Hunter Mulholland, and yeah, it's gonna be a good matchup. Hopefully, the Cardinals can pack one up tomorrow out in the Pacific Northwest. But for now, we want to say if you haven't already, like and subscribe. If you're watching this for the very first time, you see the community here in the comment section. They are wild. They have opinions
They are.
on chips,
They
and
do.
we give a chip. We really do. Boys talking ball and chips.
Oh, we
Nothing
are
wrong
we
with
are
that.
way in over our skis at this point. Hey, I'll say one more thing before you wrap it, Luke. 8 a.m. Hot Take Central on 590, the Lou Info Station. I'll be talking it over with Cam Jansen and the guys tomorrow. And then you can find me on STL Sports Central 10 a.m. with Randy Carricker, probably talking more about this Cardinal game. But I'm praying they let me talk a little Mizzou football because that's really kind of the thing that's been saving me in the spirits department recently, Luke. And I'm sure you're feeling the same.
Dude, I was out with some friends watching the game, and then Joe Rod texted me, and he was like, "Hey, jump on the stream," because
Yeah.
no one's cell phone worked. They were just like, "Come on in," and so Vic and, Pelican and Howard were very kind, and yeah, Zio, you guys, I have a bucket of opinions on that, but that is a story for another time.
Yeah.
Randy, sorry?
No, I was just laughing and agreeing. Like it's been, not to say that I don't love talking Cardinals, but like over the past couple of days, if I'm being honest, I've been thinking a little bit more about the Missouri Tigers. So do apologize to the fans who don't care about that.
There was a time when the university took like all the sports seriously at the same level and no one was really great. There were some good programs, nothing really great. And Eli Drinkwitz has the chance to do something great. I'm very excited
He
for that.
just dropped
By the
he
way,
just dropped an MIZ take on the Cardinals pod because we can. That's right. I don't know.
I was trying to think Kyle
Was
Gibson, the
vibing.
last Missouri Tiger to pitch for the Cardinals, and prior to that,
Kyle Gibson. Yeah.
who was it? Hmm. Again,
I don't know.
case in point
I'll
right
have
there.
that
You
for you
had
tomorrow.
Scherzer. Yeah, back on that Legacy Media Hot Take Central there on what's it?
There it
Is
is.
that 590?
590 Lou Info. You don't want to miss it. You really don't.
ALIS Legacy
That's it.
Media. Thanks to yeah, this is the show. Thanks everyone. Randy Carricker each day, sometimes with Matthew Rocchio, sometimes with Brooke Grimsley, sometimes with the drunk uncle from Thanksgiving. And what else we got? Bernie Mikolas, Be Shafe Daily. He's got his own channel. Check it out. I know it's kind of off the beaten path, but plug it. I have nothing. I am here. But thank you guys. Final
Hey,
score: Seattle Mariners for the St. Louis Cardinals. Too. They pay me to be here, man. They pay me, and I love it. I love you guys. Thank you. Tomorrow might be worse.
no, tomorrow will be
Tomorrow might
better
be
because tomorrow you're going to see a Cardinal win, Matthew Liberatore, and you can identify a little bit more than that happened than Burley goes bomb, sixth inning bombed in a different way. That was the whole game tonight, unfortunately, but it was.
It'll be like driving a Lime scooter down 270 in reverse, and baby, I'm here for it. All right, final score: Seattle Mariners 4 and the St. Louis Cardinals 2. He's Brenden Schaeffer. I'm Luke Slabaugh. Thanks so much for tuning in. Presented by DraftKings. The crown is yours. This is STL Sports Central.